Welcome everyone to another session of the Choice Chats. I am trying something new today. As you know, these chats are love letters to all of you who decided to make a pivotal choice that led you here and is contributing to a better world, a better tomorrow. And so I am trying something new here today. I have my wonderful Neena Perez and fabulous human Alberta Johnson, two human beings who I absolutely not only adore but admire. And I want to give a shout out to the two of you. So welcome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
This was a happy accident for those of you who don't know, but for those of you who do know me, I love to turn serendipitous mistakes, what I call happy accidents, into fantabulous opportunities. And so I want to, for the first time, highlight two incredible human beings at the same time. And so with that, I'll start with you, Neena. Tell us a little bit about your journey and what led you here today.
Wow, but my journey is really big, right? So I'm going to really narrow this down. I actually have come from a very, tumultuous past, right? So, rejected at birth, born in poverty, all that stuff that we have to overcome in life, abused, almost murdered by my domestic violent partner, stuff like that. And I grew up always the type of person who's been determined, strapping on your boots, doing what you got to do and get it done. But I was doing it broken, right? I was broken on the inside, didn't really know if I was worth anything, and always like landed in, you know, rising up in my career and in my jobs, but always working for someone else. So what has got me to this point is in 2018, I wrote my book, Hit Me With Your Best Shot, How I Overcame a Hard Hitting Life. And I realized that when that book came out and so many people were actually using it in book clubs and stuff like that, and it was starting to transform people's lives and letting them have a voice, I realized that my story is not my story anymore, but my story is for others. And so, at that moment, I really dove in completely into my coaching business, which I was already spiritually coaching. And then I got now into coaching women to transcend like all of those shame and unforgiveness and all those unwanted behaviors that keeps them down. And so now I work with driven, purpose oriented women, and I help them transition from a management or successful corporate career into entrepreneurship, and they start to build their own life coaching or whatever kind of coaching they want business, and they're seeking that guidance, right, for their mindset, for their branding, for their marketing, for their automation, all that. And the reason I do that is because I have always felt alone, and now I have built a beautiful business where I help these women not be alone. Nobody should go through this journey in life or business or wherever you're doing alone. We should do this together. So that's, in a nutshell, what kind of got me from where I was to what I'm doing today.
Neena, I am fired up. Now I want to hear from you, Alberta. What led you here today? Tell us a bit about your journey.
Well, so I'm multicultural. So my mother's Mexican, father's African American, but I grew up in kind of a middle class area where I was one of very few minorities, and kind of always found myself kind of feeling like the outlier, and that led me to want to work in diversity, which was then affirmative action. I started my career in nonprofit and wanted to help underserved communities, but also wanted to create opportunity that I did not see in the communities that I lived in. But in terms of how I got to today, I'm going to try to kind of like speed through everything. But started off a nonprofit, worked in government for about 10 years, and then jumped over to the private sector and found myself in diversity roles that were not really supported, and wanted to have more of a voice or a seat at the table, and felt that the only way that I could do that would be by becoming a head of HR. And so I did that. So I went the head of HR route and said, "Oh, I'll have my seat at the table now. I'll be able to, have more of a voice and impact companies and make sure that people get promotions and all of that." And then found that that wasn't happening there either. So I went through um, three CHR roles. Two were for consulting firms, which is what I do today. I started my own consulting firm as a result of that. But I think that every step was kind of a lesson learned. And I always thought that I was going to have a larger voice or a bigger seat at the table, and that did not happen. So, what I found was that kind of being in this HR world was, either it was seen as operationalized, it was not seen as an advisor or a partner. And I really wanted to be the advisor, the partner, and bridge the gap between DE&I and HR, because I had always found myself in separate roles. And by creating my own firm, it's allowed me to do that so that I feel like I'm not just impacting one company, I'm impacting many. And I typically work with small to mid-sized companies that don't have dedicated HR staff members, or they're just, starting to develop their people infrastructure. And it's really helping them start off on the right foot. So making sure that they are being inclusive, that they're thinking about equity, that they're promoting from within, that they're retaining those star employees that they have, and really kind of thinking about the things that I don't feel were evident in the companies that I worked for, or, at the point that I was asked to come in, there really, there was a lot of work that needed to be done, and it would take a lot of time to turn it around. So I think starting off on the right foot has allowed me to impact more. But then outside of that, I still am an advocate for DE&I, and want to have a larger impact on the community, but also still just creating those opportunities for Black and Brown communities. And you don't see that many kind of women of color that are in HR. It's a very white dominated field. And being able to give back and mentor and kind of pave the way for those that are coming, you know, behind me. But I think, to Nina's point, being an entrepreneur was not something that I thought that I would be doing. And I think that that's where my story has twisted and turned, and where I've gotten to today. But there's still more to do. I mean, there's so many, you, Nina, have both written books. I want to be on that path. And I think there's so much more to tell at this point.
Well, this is why I love the power of community, right? Because it takes a village. And to your point, we don't do it alone. And your story resonates because I was just telling someone earlier today that it's terrible when you climb up the wrong mountain and you realize, oh my gosh, I don't like this mountain. I don't like the view. I don't like what it feels like here, right? So your courage is amplifying the stories of many. And I want to focus next on what is that pivotal choice. And you both alluded to it, but what was that moment, that moment where you pivoted with purpose, right? That it went beyond the fire in your belly and really catapulted you to make that choice, that bold choice. We'll start with you, Nina.
One of the things that I found in Alberta, kudos to you because you might have not had a seat at the table, so you built your own damn table. I love that. So exactly, right? So I say that to women all the time. If you don't have a seat at the table, build your own damn table, right? Have them come to your table.
That's
And I
right.
love
Or bring
that.
a
I love
folding
that.
chair.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. It fires me up when I see women doing their thing. It's just like, anyway. Okay. So the question was, what was that pivotal moment? You know when that pivotal moment was for me? When I realized that all my life I grew up working for someone else with all my power, all my authority, all my strength, all my gifts and everything to uplift that other organization's mission, call, whatever. But what I thought was a steady thing or a secure thing really quickly became not that. right? That's when you started to realize when they change position, you're out. When they take your title away, you're out. When they want to, downsize, you're out. You are really not as secure as you think you are, right? Yes, entrepreneurship is the same way, but entrepreneurship, you get up every day and you work now the 70, 80 hours for you, right? As opposed to working the 70, 80 hours for someone else who has your future in their hands. And once I realized that, that was the like, wait a second, something's got to change. Right. And I think one of the disillusions out there, especially if you are somebody who's always on social media and things like that, is that there's a lot of lies coming at you that entrepreneurship is easy, it's quick, it's fast. You build this and you're going to have $1 million in a month. It's not that. It's not that. And I want to let people understand that it does take work, but you're working for you. Right. And once I realized, girl, you are worthy. You're really smart. You got it together. You know what you're doing. And if these people are willing to pay you six figures because of what you do, obviously you are worth six figures and more for you to do something for you. And I think that was that moment for me where I said, okay, it's time to pivot now. It's time to change. It's time to shift. And faith plays a big part in my life because I'm a believer. I believe in God. And I believe that God has set us with these gifts and talents and wisdoms and skills and all of that for a reason. And the reason that I've gone through the things that I have and you guys have gone through the things that you have is not for like just to go through. All of that is knowledge and skills that you now bring to kick the world's ass the way you want to see it. Sorry if I'm not supposed to say ass on
You
here.
can say
But
anything you want here. It's a free space.
You gotta kick some butt and take some
That's
names,
right.
And I feel like we only have one life to do it. So let's do it. What are we doing? Right? So
Neena.
that was me.
Oof. I'm going to go and run a marathon now. I love it. Alberta.
Well, it's very similar aspiration is just that, before I started my firm, I had been working for two other consulting firms where I was working that, 16, 17 hours a day and
Mm-hmm.
had, built out their clientele, their service line, and then kind of found myself in a position where the company was going through a merger and acquisition and was not really telling me that. And I was actually just on a webinar right before this where that was the conversation, like leaders not getting straight answers from their CEOs. And then you've put in all of this time and effort, and you do also start to compromise your own brand when you
Yeah.
have yourself in these companies, because you lose credibility because you can't be straight with the people that you're managing, or it looks like you're not being honest in the way that you're operating or leading when you really just don't have the information yourself. And
Mm.
I became very conscious of that because, to Nina's point, it was when all of these changes started to happen, then I found myself on unstable ground where I didn't know what was going to happen. And then it was, am I going to have to look for something else? And then this press release had already went out. And so everyone knew that I was at this company or several companies, and then having to keep moving and moving and moving and, not really having an explanation for that, but it was things that were out of my control. And I wanted to put that control back in my hands. So that was, me deciding I could do this for myself. I knew that I could do it. I had done it several times. And it takes time. It's not something that I did overnight. I did start the business 3 years ago. This has been my first kind of full year, fully fledged in the business, but had been consulting for the past 10 years. And
Mm.
knew that there was a market for it. But yes, there's millions of companies out there. There's other people that do what I do, but I still say that they're not me because they don't have
Yeah.
my knowledge. They don't have my experience. They don't have my background. And I think that that's where I feel that I add value, and I can still, do other things and not be limited, because that was the other
Right.
thing with the limitations that were put on me with these companies where it was, you can't go and speak at that conference, or this has to be approved, or you can't say that. And it was just very limiting, and I did not feel like I was growing personally or professionally, and I felt like this was the only way I was going to really be able to put my voice out there.
And you bring up such an important point because we are we are shaped, particularly in corporate, to fit into a certain mold. And there comes a time where you realize that the mold no longer fits you, number one. And number two, that it's eroding your authenticity. So it is incredibly courageous to do what you did. You know, you reached a certain level of success, yet you realize that it was no longer representing who you are as a person. And so this is an important message, particularly as so many are pivoting today. So many in many different ways, not always entrepreneurship, but pivoting within your own organization, cracking out of that shell and in owning your authenticity. So congratulations for that. And I want to turn this into a message moment. What is that one message that you want to leave our audiences with? And I'll start with you, Alberta.
I would say that, and I know this probably sounds cliche, but definitely follow your passion, because you feel it in your gut when something is not right. And every time I took one of those positions, I knew from the beginning it was probably not going to work out, or it was not the right place for me. There was always something that told me that this was not forever. It was not the place to stay. But I think that you really just have to trust yourself and be confident, because I think that that's where we lose the passion, is that when we don't believe in ourselves. And it's never going to be easy. And I think, to Nina's point as well, even though you may have gotten this bright new shiny thing, this great job, this great title, nothing is guaranteed, and it can be gone tomorrow. But if you are working for yourself, I think that there's much more reward and gratification when you start to see that grow. And you will continue to do all and everything that you can to keep you and yourself and your business going, where that loyalty is not there with a company. And I've seen that happen many times on the HR side, where I think a lot of people think that the company cannot operate without them, and they can, and they will make those decisions in a split second without thinking about all of the hours and sacrifices that you made. And just with Mother's Day coming up, it has given me the flexibility to spend more time with my family, my mother, and I did not have that before. And I think that you really need to start to think about what sacrifices you're making personally and professionally by staying in those spaces.
Thank you, Alberta. I mean, it's such a powerful message, again, because people sacrifice so much of themselves and their personal lives to commit to something that's not necessarily aligned with who they are and what they're passionate about. Nina, what would you like to leave our listeners with?
You are worthy. You are absolutely worthy and fully equipped with everything you need to do what it is you want to do. I always say fear is a liar. So every time that something comes against you where you are afraid of starting something new, maybe starting your own, enterprise, maybe starting your own coach, whatever that is that you're trying to get done, the first thing that comes in is that fear. But fear is a liar. And I always use fear as an acronym of face and eliminate all restrictions. So if you are at the precipice of, like, let's say a beach, and there's like a line in the sand, and you are either to go forward and swim or stay back, you always have to think of fear is nothing but reminding you of the stuff that went wrong in the past, and also showing you of stuff you don't know. I say leap anyway. Just go for a swim, right? Because at the end of the day, everything that we have ever been afraid of and we've done, we realize it's really nothing to be afraid of, right? So you started that first job and you were so scared that first day of your job. Oh my God, how am I ever going to do this? And then you start to do it in your sleep because you've been doing it for so long. I just want everybody to understand that they are already fully equipped with everything they need in them. So face and eliminate all restrictions.
Mic drop.
But
Mic drop. Because we are always and will always be afraid. We're naturally
Always.
wired to be afraid, but do it afraid. Do it anyway.
Right.
Great message, especially as we pivot daily. So I appreciate you both for your gracious patience with me and for partaking in this very happy, very serendipitous accident.
This was awesome.
Thank you. I love you both so much, and
Love
I wish
you.
you and the rest of our listeners a fantastic weekend.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.